Welcome to Abandoned Albums, the documentary podcast. Each week, our intrepid group of researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, finding those albums that may have been lost over time. If a new artist is discovered along the way, that's all the better. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one album to discuss. Once that is settled, we will invite the artists to Thunder Love Studio to chat with your hosts, Keith R. Higgins. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Abandoned Albums is simple: to make sure artists' recorded work remains, or in some cases, lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
This week, we have an artist who has played with everyone from Charlie Sexton to Martha Davis, to Storyville, to the Bump Band, to Billy Bragg, and everyone in between. We recently had the privilege of sitting down with the renowned drummer Don Harvey to delve into his illustrious career and solo work, which you're getting a taste of now with his latest release, Europa. So why wait any longer? Here's our conversation with the legendary Don Harvey.
Hey, Troy.
Well, thank you, Don Harvey, for making a repeat appearance on Abandoned Albums.
I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, for sure. For those of you listening, Don was on the very first episode of Abandoned Albums with the Broken Homes Band, which is a band that he drummed for during that on that record. My gosh, you've got quite the CV, as they say. You've toured and recorded with Ian McLagan, Billy Bragg, Joe Ely, Charlie Sexton, Storyville, and Martha Davis. That's Martha Davis of the Motels, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. You've performed live with Bruce Springsteen, Pete Townsend, Ronnie Wood, and Alejandro Escovedo.
Escovedo, yes.
Escovedo.
Yeah.
You've received the Best Drummer honors at the Austin Music Awards in 2007.
Way back there. Yep.
Yeah. even more recently, your ensemble A is Red won Best Avant-Garde Band in 2015. And you just released your most recent extended play album, Canyonland, in May.
Yeah.
That is impressive as all get out. I have many questions about a lot of this stuff. So
ask away. I'm here.
Let's jump into it. Did you grow up in Austin?
No, I grew up in New York on Long Island.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. How did you? Wow. All right. I did not expect that answer at all.
There could be a lot of unexpected answers here, Keith.
So did you start drumming then in the New York scene in the 70s?
No. I graduated high school. My parents decided to move to Israel. I didn't know what to do, so I went over there too. Had my drums shipped over and made my first recordings there with some really famous people there because I was this American drummer that was in Tel Aviv.
Wow.
Believe it or not. So it's going to get more surprising.
Yeah, I did. That's a left turn. I did not expect that. And that's what a weird time. There was a lot of controversry. There was a lot of controversy in Israel.
Always been. I mean, there's always been a struggle, right? But we wish for peace.
Yeah.
We just wish for peace. That's all.
What led you to drumming out of all the instruments? Was there a specific drummer that turned you on, or?
I think, well, Charlie Watts. I mean, Charlie Watts, I think it all started in Maine. I was at summer camp. I was about 12, and we went on this day trip somewhere, and we were out on a dock on this, at this, I don't know, I guess it was like a restaurant where they had an outside deck, and there was hardly anybody there, and they put on Honky Tonk Women.
Okay.
And I heard that, and it was like, that was it. That was it.
Really?
Yeah, I heard that groove, and I had to play drums.
Huh.
I mean, I think before that I was banging on everything, for sure.
Yeah,
before that I was, I didn't have a drum kit, but I was, just banging on tables and driving everybody nuts.
And your parents decided to up the ante and get you a drum kit.
Yeah, I demanded one. I got a snare drum and a cymbal first, and then I got a kit. And then I got a very cheap little kit, and then I got a really good kit, a used kit. And my dad we went up to Westchester County and picked up this drum kit, and it was Gretsch, because that's what I wanted, because that's what Charlie Watts played.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So you're in Long Island.
Yeah.
And in that scene, that puts us in mid-70s, late 70s?
Yeah, I left Long Island. I went overseas in 74, the end of 74.
Okay.
And then I moved to Los Angeles in 1980. My sister lived in LA, and I wanted to pursue, she was sending me Music Connection magazines, and I wanted to pursue a career as a drummer.
Did you have your eyes set on being a member of a band? Did you want to be a studio? Did you want to be a working musician? I mean, like a studio drummer, or?
I wanted to be everything I could. I loved playing, and I wanted to record, and I wanted to tour. Okay. That's what I wanted: record and tour.
So it didn't take long before you fell in with Charlie Sexton. Then a few years, right?
It took a while. It took It took 5 years from the time I got to LA, and I played with this band and that original band and that cover band and that original band, and nobody that was that very well known. But people that were playing bands that were playing the Troubadour and the Starwood and Madame Zwang East and Madame Zwang West. So I got heavy into the scene there. Is
that where you met, again, friend of the pod, Jeff Irick, when you were?
Yes. Yeah. That's where I met Jeff Irick, because he was, he was a record producer. He was producing a lot of great stuff. And I met him after I started playing with Charlie.
Okay.
And he called me in on the Broken Home session,
Yes, he did.
And then he called me in on a few other record sessions.
Now, how did you meet Charlie? Because he couldn't have been, he was touted as being like 16 or 17. I don't know how old he was really.
He was 16 when I auditioned.
Holy
and by that time I was 28.
Wow, that's a trip.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah.
He's an incredible musician. I mean, that was a long time ago. And I think, the album he did back then that was a big hit, Beat So Lonely.
Right.
That was the hit, and the album was Pictures for Pleasure. I don't think he really relishes that he did that record, at this point in his life. But he's a phenomenal guitar player, phenomenal producer. He plays with Elvis Costello now. And of course, he played with Bob Dylan for many, many years.
So you're with Charlie. Now, while you're with Charlie, are you solely working with Charlie, or are you doing studio gigs as well?
I'm doing as many studio gigs as I can, playing with this one and that one and the other one. And but when he started touring, when we started the tour, I think it was January 1st. It was New Year's Eve, 1986. And we played the MTV New Year's Eve Rock and Roll Ball. And that kicked off the tour. And we went upstate New York. I mean, we went upstate New York. We went to Buffalo, in the dead of winter.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, lovely. A lovely tour.
Yeah.
But we had loads of fun. I think it was one of the first. So my nickname among a lot of musicians and friends is Don Don. So that nickname came when I think it was one of the first gigs. We were up in Buffalo, I think, or one of the snowed in cities up there. And the rooming list, I got the rooming list and it said Don Harvey. So everybody had the rooming list. And so that night, Charlie called me Don Harvey.
That's fantastic.
And then from then on, I've been Don.
I love that. I just figured it was Don because somebody had donharvey.com already. So there's actually a story to it.
There's a story to it. Yeah. And then when I played with Ian McLagan, we had loads of fun, and he had a great sense of humor. And I tend to repeat myself. I'll say things twice. If I really want to make a point, I'll say things twice, just like I did just now. So he wanted to call me Don Harvey because of that. Says things twice. So anyway, there you go. That's the Don.
How did you connect with Martha Davis? To me, Martha Davis has one of the greatest voices, female voices in rock and roll. Underappreciated.
Well, first you asked how I got the gig with Charlie, and that was a cattle call audition at Leeds Rehearsal Studio in LA. It was I think there were 13 or 14 people that came down to audition, and I just really wanted it. Somebody that was playing guitar with him, Jack Sherman, said, "Hey, you should check this guy out." And so I went down. I was probably one of 13 or 14 people. So I got it because I really wanted it. For me, it was never about having athletic skills as a drummer. It's always just about being a groove drummer, because Charlie Watts was my hero. So being a groove drummer was the thing. And so play with a lot of bands and meet a lot of people. And that's it. And then if you have to audition, be really, really prepared, So auditioning for that band, I was very prepared, and I was just wanted it.
I tried to drum once. I just don't have I haven't trained myself to have the brain capacity to divide my brain into those segments.
Yeah.
I think I'm far too old now.
I don't know. I wouldn't say that.
I realized as I said it, I'm like, I'm not far too old.
You're not. I mean, you can learn an instrument at any time. I mean, drums, I will say that drums is an instrument that if you have a good sense of time and you tend to tap your feet with really good time in a song and you're not going off very much, you probably can learn how to play drums. But for me, it was I had to play drums. It was like, this is something I have to do because I love doing it. Like from beginning.
Now this is jumping ahead a little bit, and that's okay. We can do whatever the hell we want.
Sure.
Do you play more than drums?
To write, and this is something that I've changed the way I write. recently, because you can't write music on a drum set, but you can. So this is how I started to write. Whenever I would get drum sounds at a gig or in the studio, they want you to play a groove forever, play the kick drum, whatever. And I would always kind of hum. It was just part of something I did, and it just something I did. Or even when I was recording, and when I'd come back in, I'd hear myself doing that and go, oh my God, I got to stop that. But at some point I was practicing at home. This is like 18 years ago and I was humming while I was playing, and there was a melody to it. So I recorded the melody, and then I recorded another melody, and I got my first little EP out, and it was just that organic. It was just kind of an organic thing that happened.
I do want to get to the Martha Davis. I just think she's
Martha Davis. Yes.
I think she's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. She's great.
Wildly underappreciated, I feel.
First time I heard her at Madame Wong's West in LA in 1981, I think. I was just smitten by the band, by everything. Yeah. So how did I get to play with her?
Yeah.
Tim Neese was managing Charlie Sexton back then. And he was also managing Martha Davis when the Motels broke up. So the Motels broke up. The bass player, Michael Goodrow, was still playing with her. And she hired a new band, and I was hired. And I toured with her for a while. I didn't tour with her for a long time, but I toured with her for a while.
Interesting. You'll find that I say that a lot. I say interesting a lot.
That's interesting.
Is there really an unreleased album with Joe Ely and Linda Ronstadt?
There is. And guess who produced it?
Jeff Irick?
Yes.
Get the fuck out of town. Really?
Yes. Jeff Irick produced a record with a Joe Ely record that never came out. I don't know any of the backstory to it. I'm sorry, but
no, that's all right.
I played drums on the record. And one of the songs was Linda Ronstadt was singing either a duet or backups or something. Yeah.
Now, that's interesting. I'll have to ask him about that. He's never mentioned it, because that is truly an abandoned album. And I've been thinking about our conversation the other day, and I've been thinking more and more about it.
Now you should ask him about it. I mean, I don't know the backstory, so maybe there's backstory involved that he doesn't want to talk. I don't know. Who knows? But ask him for sure.
Now, you also worked with Sid Straw, who's another great singer.
I didn't work with her. Okay. She sang on a song that David Halley wrote that I played on a version of. But I never actually worked with Sid Straw. Sid Straw was on a song that I recorded with David Halley.
Okay. And who's David Halley? I don't know that name.
David Halley is an amazing singer-songwriter from Lubbock, Texas, that's lived in Austin for many, many years and was really popular in the late 80s and 90s. And I look him up.
For sure.
Incredible songwriter. I think he's up there with the best of the Texas songwriters that have ever lived.
That's
He had
quite a
the song
statement.
Rain Just Falls. I think it's one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard or had the honor to play along with. And rain don't fall for the flowers when it's fallen. Rain just falls. It's a great lyric.
I got a little sad feeling. It's just,
yeah. Well,
for me, it gave me, my friend refers to it as the lonely feeling.
the lonely feeling. I know the lonely feeling.
Yes, all too well. I do want to ask about Storyville before we get into your stuff.
So I recorded the first Storyville album, which was called something blue. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. So I recorded that first album. Stephen Bruton produced it. Okay. And I was on it. Chris Layton was on it. And Barry Frosty Smith was on it. So there were 3 drummers on it. I think I was on most of the songs. Chris was on a couple, and Barry was on a couple.
Sometimes it seems the things you need are so far out of reach that you don't know the road you're on will get you where you wanna be. You gotta work every day to find a way to make yourself believe. And step by step, you get a little closer to that dream. If you want to, you can do it. Climb that mountain, or you can move it one rock at a time. 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 Oh, the further you go, the more you know.
The band reshuffled, and Malford Milligan formed a different band. So that became David Grissom, Chris Layton, Malford Milligan. God, who's on bass? Tommy Shannon?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah. Tommy Shannon, yeah.
Who I think I read this a few years ago, and you will know more than I do. He retired from music, and I love the fact that somebody just retired from music.
Yeah, he did retire. He did.
Yeah. Good for him. God knows he earned it. The Bump Band. Tell us a little bit about the Bump Band.
Ian McLagan and the Bump Band. So you know who Ian McLagan is?
I do. He played with a bunch of people. Faces, right?
Faces. Small Faces, and of course, Rolling Stones. Yep. 3 albums and 2 tours, I believe. Some Girls and Tattoo You. So he's the keyboard player. And God, he played with so many people. He played with Dylan. He played with Bonnie Raitt. He played with. He's just, one of the great rock and roll Hammond B3 players and piano keyboard players. So Ronnie Lane lived in Austin, Texas. Okay. Another bass player from the Faces. And back in 1990, Ronnie had MS, and there was a tour put together for Ronnie to play in Japan. And Ian McLagan flew in to rehearse. Rich Brotherton is a guitar player here in Austin, great player. He brought me in to be the drummer on this tour. And management somehow was able to bring Ian McLagan in. So we have 2 members of the Faces.
Wow.
And we toured Japan, short, beautiful, fun tour. And Mac and I just really hit it off big time. We had a great time. We had all kinds of crazy things we were doing in Japan. All the different taxi cab have different shapes on top of them. Like, here there was one shape, and there they had like a circle and horns and all these different shapes. So we had this contest for who could find the weirdest shape, or a shape we hadn't seen before. He entertained everybody with stuff like this, and we just had fun. And then I think there was an earthquake in 1993 in LA, and he liked it in Austin a lot. And he used to say, I'm going to get out of Shaky Town. And he came and he moved to Austin.
Okay.
And he asked me to help put a band together. So I said, hey, well, we have this young Keith Richards guy named Scrappy Judd Newcomb. He's fantastic. And we have this bass player, Sarah Brown, and she's incredible. And he said, okay, that's the band.
Awesome.
And morphed into the bump band. But there were bump bands in LA, like several incarnations of the bump band in LA.
Okay.
Lots of great players went through the bump band, graduated from Ian McLagan's bump band over the years.
Sort of like a Frank Zappa school.
Maybe. maybe not as
militant
the school.
Drop the needle on the Album Nerds podcast.
Just the album nerds.
Just album nerds.
Join Andy, Don, and Dude each week as they discuss albums from themes chosen by the Wheel of Musical Discovery.
Heavy metal guitar virtuosos.
Double albums.
TV raps.
Punk rock.
The top 10 albums of 1986.
Uncover hidden gems, revisit classics, and hear fresh takes on your favorite records.
Exile on Main Street.
Some of what country music can do best is that storytelling.
This is a messy album for sure.
I just want to hear Floyd and everything, I think.
Born in the USA.
And it sounds great overall as an album. I'm just not moved by it.
The Album Nerds podcast. Three guys talking music.
This is what we call freestyling.
Yes. That's what we call freestyling. No one else would call it that. Other people would call it find another podcast to listen to. Okay, so
give it a spin wherever you find podcasts and albumnerds.com.
Well, I'm going to throw this one at you. What the fuck's a paradiddle?
It's right, left, right, left, right, or the opposite. So when you do that, right, left, left, you can do it pretty fast manually, but to do it really fast, and something I can't do anymore because I don't practice, I prefer to write music now and record music. If you do it really fast, then you're working with the bounce of the stick on the drum head. So if you have a pretty tight drum head, a pretty tight snare head, at a certain point you switch from manual to bounce. And when you switch to bounce, you're playing with gravity, right? You're playing with bounce, and then you can kind of press into it, and it gets really fast. That's the only way I can describe it.
That describes it just fine by me.
Okay.
I mean, I understand it now. I'm looking at your CV online. There's so much here. There's so much here. The Late Show with David Letterman.
They did that with Ian McLagan and the Bump Band. It was amazing. It was great. And Patty Griffin sang backups.
Yep.
And she sang on that song. And so she came to New York with us and sang live.
Now we get into the heart of the matter. Your work, your individual work. You have 1, 2, 3 records, an EP and a single, it looks like.
Yes.
A Dance in Red from 2009.
Right, from 2009. And Light Shines Through from 2012.
Now, Don Harvey and A is Red.
A is Red is an ensemble I put together not long after I put out my first little EP in 2009. I didn't expect anything to happen with that. I just wanted to do something different. Not rock and roll, but has rock and roll in it. Had lots of different elements in it, Eastern and and I was told, well, you should play live. And I was like, I don't know. It's like I've always been a sideman. I don't know if I can play live with my own band. But I was cajoled into doing it, and I did it, and it was hard. That transition from being the drummer in the back to being the drummer in the back who's leading the band and talking between pieces and all of that. But I got used to it, and I got to like it. And so that is a band I performed all the material from the first 2 records.
Okay.
And then that's the band that I got together with and performed with. And one of the guys that was in that band, I wrote a couple of the pieces from Light Shines Through together with him. Phenomenal musicians, Stefano Intellisano, great writer. And so he nudged me in a direction I otherwise would not have gone. But in 2020, I think it was February 29th, or I don't know, it was March 1st or the end of February of 2020, we recorded a live record live at the Townsend, and No Place to Fall is a Townes Van Zandt song that we did an instrumental version of. It's a beautiful melody, just a gorgeous melody, and it stood on its own without lyrics. And we had the trumpet playing the vocal melody, and so we named it that. Yeah, and then I didn't record anything for a long time. I mean, I hadn't written anything original by myself forever, for a long, long time.
I do want to ask you about one song.
Okay.
Off the first record. It's The Wish, parentheses for Dad. It's got a really sad vibe to it.
Yeah.
Tell us about that song.
I think it's got a really beautiful calmness about it, and it also has a lot of anxiety about it. So it has both. My father was a phenomenal sculptor, and he designed building facades and room dividers that are kind of iconic from mid-century. They're highly collectible, and he was just a really complicated guy and a beautiful guy. And there was a lot of traumatic stuff growing up. And so all my feelings, the sadness, the beautiful kindness, the difficulties, it all kind of came out in that piece. And it's not like I'm not writing lyrics, right?
Right.
It's just all feelings. And Graham Reynolds played piano on that. I don't know how I was able to do that, but he's one of the great composers in Austin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you grew up in a creative environment then?
I did. I grew up in a very creative environment.
Was your mom an artist as well, or?
My mom is an artist. She's still alive. She's going to be 100 soon.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. She's not painting anymore, but she painted for years. And my father was a sculptor and a businessman.
Okay.
And my sister is an artist, and my brother is an exhibit designer. So we're all. I was the only one that was in the music side of things. But yeah.
That's incredible that you. It almost seems. Oh, I don't know anything about that. Didn't grow up in that environment, but that's awesome that you all turn to the arts. I think it's awesome.
Well, I'm glad you do.
And the world is a better place.
Yeah,
because of all of your family's work.
Oh well.
Well, it's true.
Oh, well,
art matters.
Art matters. Art does matter, and thank you for showcasing artists and bringing artists to the fore that might have been forgotten, and interviewing artists that haven't been forgotten, that might be getting recognized. It's great. I think what you do is a fantastic thing, and your podcast is fun to listen to.
Thank you very much for the kind words. Thank you. Light Shines Through from 2012.
Mm-hmm.
The song Whirl.
Mm-hmm.
It's a clear mix of rock, jazz, and funk. That bass line is really funky. Am I off base on that?
Yeah, no, you're not. It's kind of, I think it's the most jazz rock piece I've ever done. Not so comfortable in that space, to be honest, because there's a lot of things that sound the same in that space. But I don't know. I like there's a certain groove I was playing that was unusual, and the groove went with that melody somehow. I don't know. It's not a complicated piece. There's not a whole lot to it, but there's a lot of energy in it.
And the title track, the cello open.
Yeah.
Oh God, I fucking love that. And then it goes into my note is it goes into an almost modern gospel vibe.
It does. It does. That I do love that piece. It still resonates with me. It's got Ruthie Foster is singing on it, and she's only singing. Her voice is an instrument. She's not singing any lyrics.
Right.
And she's just an incredible singer. And Rob Loffer, a very good old friend of mine, did a vocal arrangement for the harmonies that I think is like. It reminded me a little bit of Stevie Wonder.
Oh wow!
It's a real fat backbeat, and the snare is detuned, kind of low, and it just, yeah. And that's another one that I wrote with Stefano, and he came up with a bridge. I never would have come up with a bridge like that. So it's more than just me.
My note here is the cello open. This is an honest to God note. Moi. I just thought it was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. It's it was a rare moment where I got up at like 4 a.m. with this thing in my head. I've had a few of those. They're super rare, but I've had a few, and that was one of them.
Then you released the single Behind the Fog.
Behind the Fog was recorded in 2016 with A is Red.
Yes.
And never released. It is, I think, kind of the band at its peak. Maybe not. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it was Sarah Brown on bass, a phenomenal bass player, one of the best in Austin. She's a blues player, and everybody knows her as a blues player. But on that piece of music, she's a lot more that she's a jazz bass player.
Yeah,
you know, deep. And Sarah and I have played in many different bands for over the years, and so we had a really good lock. And Kevin Flatt on trumpet, Chris Downey on guitar. We just really, I don't know. It was a piece of music that I also wrote with Stefano, and it's the closest to classical music I think I've ever gotten.
Okay.
I think, and I was thinking about Gershwin. I was thinking about, and then I wanted to I wanted the choruses and the outro to be really kind of nasty, kind of like, I don't know, what is the word? Dirty, just like balls to the wall. So it starts out very kind of classical in a way, and then it morphs into this balls to the wall rock piece.
Yes, I have my note is heavy, almost dirge-like.
Yeah.
You know?
So,
what it reminded me of was 07.
Oh, really? Oh, that's, wow.
Yeah. That's what I took from
Cool. Oh, I like that.
I didn't go to Vietnam just to have pansies like you take my freedom away from me.
You went to Vietnam in 1993 to open up a sweatshop.
And a lot of good men died in that sweatshop.
Oh my God, you're out of your mind.
Look.
What is your writing process like then? Do you set aside a certain amount of time during the day, or?
So my writing process changed a lot. When I was working with my ensemble and writing back then, in the beginning, I was just singing into the recorder on my phone, and then coming back and playing drums with some of them and establishing a general melody and a groove, and then going to the band and going, how about this? How about that? And we'd all kind of put input in, and it'd be like, oh, that's great for this. No, that doesn't work. That kind of a thing. Now I decided that, and this is about 1.5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to learn how to use a recording workstation like Pro Tools or any of the others. And I got a teacher who's a personal friend to teach me how to record digitally, something I never knew. And it opened up a whole new world to me, a whole new world, because not only is it's Joe McDermott, not only does he teach this subject, he teaches music, he influenced the way I write in a really good way. So, he's very valid. You're inspired by a melody, record it. Maybe you're going to do something with it. Totally valid. Let's also try this. So with a digital workstation, I'm working from a keyboard. On that keyboard, I can play any instrument I want. And even though I don't play piano, I don't play any of these instruments, I know how they should be played. I know parts that work and parts that don't work. And I have a big imagination for melody and for groove. So I started just putting my hands on the keyboards and just seeing what worked and being in a certain mood and playing in a certain way and just letting it go. And he taught me to just put my hand on the keyboard and just start, just do it. So all of this new batch was done that way. And so in order to play parts that are somewhat complicated, if a person, and this is how it's just everybody does it that doesn't play an instrument proficiently, is you play, 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5 chords in a row that go together. That's my process, and they feel good together. And then I stop and I listen to what I just did. And I think about what might go well with that. What mood could I create if I offset that last chord? What do I want to do next? And I go into the next section and I do the same thing. And then I listen to them together. Oh, now we're starting to come out with something. And then I do another section. And I listen back and I form a longer section, like an A section, from what I've strung together. And then I start on another part of it. And I'll come up with like maybe 3 sections, an A section, a B section, a bridge, but it's instrumental music and it's what is the word? Somewhat ambient. I think my music is somewhat ambient.
Huh. Have you ever considered putting lyrics to yours instead of just the vocalizations?
I've thought about it. I've thought about having someone else put lyrics to it, not me. Somebody that knows how to write lyrics. I think, if I've got a really nice piece with a nice melody, then yeah, absolutely. I've thought about sending it to so-and-so or so-and-so and seeing if they want to write something for it.
Okay.
I don't think lyrically. I think melodically and I think groove. I don't, when I'm listening to anybody from Crosby, Stills and Nash to Radiohead, I'm never focused on lyrics. I'm always focused on melody and groove and the music as a whole and the mood. That's just where I'm coming from.
There's a guy named Christian James Hand who has a podcast, and he does this thing. What he does is he'll take popular songs, he'll strip them down, and he'll build them up as you might record them in the studio. So you start with the drums, then you add the bass, and you get to hear all these popular songs stripped out and hear the instrumentation to them and just how sick some of them are. My question to you is, when you're writing, do you write in a similar manner in that you write from the drums up?
Great question. Funny, the weird thing is that, being a drummer, a lot of people write with the drums first. And I have done that for several pieces, like Light Shines Through. you know, and there have been several pieces that I've written where the drums come first, but not this latest batch. I mean, there's no drums. I mean, I'm just banging on my leg on one of the pieces on the new on the new EP. I'm just banging on my leg and breathing. You can kind of hear me breathing on Into the Spring. So I'm banging on my leg and I'm breathing, and you can hear that on the track. There's atmospheric percussion that my good friend John Bush did. And John Bush he was in Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians for like, I don't know, 25, 27 years.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, great percussionist. And he played in my band for a while. He probably played like maybe 20 gigs with us. And I never wanted to play drums without a percussionist again, because John was so good. And I just, you know, he doesn't overplay. He plays really, what is the word? Sparsely and spiritually and organically. I mean, he's a badass too. You know, so he played. I didn't want an actual like groove. I just wanted atmospheric percussion and a little bit of a groove.
Are you playing these songs live, or do you have the intention of playing them live? Taking them on the road, as it were.
Yeah. I might. Right now, I've lost a lot of my hearing. You know, so drumming was not good to my hearing because I didn't wear ear protection, especially when I was younger. I didn't wear ear protection on the road. When I had monitors, huge monitors, you know, for click tracks right in my ears, like these little Boss monitors. And I really kind of damaged my hearing quite a bit. So I have to use hearing aids in order to hear properly. And without them, I'm just saying what all the time. And I also have something called tinnitus, which most drummers suffer from that are older. And so when I play drums live and I play loud, I'm a loud drummer. That's just how I am. You know, I can play quietly, but I do play loud. I get tinnitus really bad, and it'll last a week or two after a show. So right now, I'm really happy to write and record what I write and put it out there. And perhaps when I have enough material, I'll go out, put the band back together again, and go out and play some of the stuff.
The last thing I want to ask you about, I wanted to make sure we get to this, is you co-founded the Sims Foundation. Is that right? Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that? Because I think what you're doing there seems to be very, very important work.
So when I first came to Austin, I came to Austin not only for playing music, but also to open a rehearsal studio, a rehearsal and recording studio called the ARC, the Austin Rehearsal Complex. And in a nutshell, there was a band that rehearsed there a lot, and they were very popular, and they were a metal band that they were called Pariah. And they got a big record deal with Geffen and all kinds of huge publishing deal. And they were set to hit the road, and their album kind of just fizzled. They were a great band. And two brothers were in the band, the Ellison brothers, and one of them, Sims Ellison, suffered very badly from depression and anxiety. and not as a direct result of the album being shelved or whatever happened, but there was a big buildup, right? So it wasn't as a direct result of that, but there were many things that led to it. He took his own life.
Oh gosh.
And Michael Corcoran, who also just passed away, a phenomenal music writer who lived in Austin and mostly wrote about Austin music, but also wrote for Spin and a lot of magazines. Right after Sims passed away in 1995, he wrote an article, and in that article, he came up with the idea that, man, musicians need mental health help. You know, why there should be an organization that helps musicians with mental health care. You know, therapists that understand the psychology of the musician. And he said, you know, the people over at the Austin Rehearsal Complex are taking donations, and the donations originally were going to go for a fountain on the hike and bike trail, and there actually is a fountain on the hike and bike trail, but this is 1995, and a few $1,000s came in,
Okay.
which was real money.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael knew about that, and he came up with this idea, and we were like, we got to do this. So Wayne Nagel, who was my business partner, we owned the Austin Rehearsal Complex together, and I and Alejandro Escovedo and a lawyer named Walter Taylor, we started the Sims Foundation. And of course, Sims' father, Don Ellison.
Okay.
So Sims' father, Don Ellison, Wayne Nagel, Alejandro Escovedo, a lawyer named Walt Taylor, and me. So there were 5 of us. The main drivers of the 5 really were Don Ellison, Wayne Nagel, me, and Alejandro Escovedo.
Okay.
Walter Taylor was also, he was pivotal in getting our legal act together to form a nonprofit. But honestly, none of us really knew what we were doing. None of us were in the mental health field.
Okay.
Michael, I asked Michael, hey, if anybody calls or writes, says anything about this, send them our way. And that's how we got our first executive director, Peyton Wimmer. It was force of will. It's like, this has to happen. If Michael hadn't written that article, and I just spoke about this at his celebration of life, and I read the article aloud, if he hadn't written that article, it would not have happened. And if we hadn't heeded the call and made it happen, it wouldn't have happened. And it took a community. Austin music community is really a tight-knit community, was back then. And I think to a degree it is now too.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's 29 years later, and the organization has saved a lot of lives and improved a lot of lives. Because let's face it, being a musician without any other source of income, if you don't have money from any other source, and trying to work your way up is tough.
At the least, yes.
At the least, it's a tough road,
Uh-huh.
and people need help along the way. And so the therapists that work with Sims know something about that. Some of them have spouses that are musicians, So it really is something. I'm real proud of it, and I'm really happy that it's still going. I still raise funds for the organization, and whenever I can, if I can, I raise funds. And I also help. I've helped recently to bring in a new CEO for the organization, who comes from Ronald McDonald House and really is top pro at what he does. And we have a phenomenal volunteers and a dedicated board, and a dedicated president of our board now. And I think Wayne and I prefer not being on the board, so that we can kind of say, because by not being on the board, we can say, well, what about this? What about that?
I think mental health issues are just so often overlooked, and there's still so much shame, embarrassment around them. So
yeah,
it's unfortunate, but
well, I think less so now than before.
Absolutely,
much less so, and that's a good thing.
Oh, 100%. And people, people are speaking openly about their battles with it, which I think is really important. People, public figures, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And that
think
really helped.
Yeah.
It's really helped.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I have another piece of music that I just finished and I just got mastered. I sent it to you.
Please do. What's the title?
It's called Europa.
Okay.
Europa. And it's got no groove. It's very spacey and it's different than anything else I've done. I mean, it has commonality in the melody, but it's different. And so I'm going out there. I'm exploring some different areas. And this one I'm doing with John Bush, the percussionist, who has a phenomenal, beautiful studio, and he's a really good engineer. The last batch I did with Joe McDermott, I can say the same thing about him. Working with another drummer is just great. We think the same way. We hear things. We perceive time in the same way.
I guess that makes sense. That would make sense. Well, I look forward to hearing it. And you're okay if I play it on the pod, right?
Oh, sure.
Okay. And I will be playing samples of your music.
Oh, great. Yeah, please do.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I don't have the MP3s for like Light Shines Through, and they were corrupted or something. I don't know.
I can get them. It's just like, sometimes I get thrown in Spotify jail.
Yeah, I hear you. It's all out there.
I do want to say thank you. It's always great talking to you, Don. You're got so much energy. Thank you. I wish you continued success. I'm going to go ahead and hit end.
Many thanks to Don for sharing his story with us. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all of Don's work.
This episode of Abandoned Albums was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration.
Abandoned Albums was edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
At the beginning of this podcast, you were treated to a diverse selection of music, including the soulful sounds of Forever by Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul, the indie vibes of Velvet Roof by Buffalo Tom, and the raw energy of Nevermind by The Replacements. Our theme song is Kiss the Earth by The Renegades. You can stream all of these artists wherever you stream your favorite music. The songs you heard during this podcast were Europa and A Dance in Red by Don Harvey. You also heard One Rock at a Time by Storyville and She Stole It by The Bump Band. You heard The Wish and Light Shining Through, both by Don Harvey, and Behind the Fog by Don Harvey featuring A is Red. And lastly, you heard Into the Spring by Don Harvey. Check out the show notes for links to all of Don's work. You can also stream his music wherever you stream your favorite music. Please remember to support independent music.
Original music by Mike Pellegrino.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki, Mike Pellegrino, Thurina Bella,
Eric Beatner, S.W. Loudon, Ronnie Barnett,
Michael Janicki, Peyton Janicki.
This show's executive producer is Lulu McGillicuddy and is in the loving memory of
Rufus Thunderlove.
Abandoned Albums receives funding from Damon Pharmaceuticals, the makers of Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck is the only chewable tablet made to combat stomach unease associated with mediocrity. Taken daily, Ben Affleck can help combat explosive gastrointestinal shame. You can find a multitude of flavors in the incontinence section of your local pharmacy. Ben Affleck, save yourself the embarrassment.
The side effects include dry mouth, headache, anal leakage, muscle soreness, bad decisions, gender confusion, constipation, evil spirit possession, and banality. Use only as directed.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.